morning to see you all, and let me, by way of introducing, say, hey, I'm really looking forward to today's meeting with the defense ministers. It will be very much about the implementation of what we decided in The Hague, ramping up Canada and Europe when it comes to defense spending, across the alliance, making sure that the defense industrial base is producing the output we need to be able to deter and defend ourselves. And obviously Ukraine, where you just heard the good news from John Healey, the UK Defence Secretary of Defence, announcing £500 million in air defence, both bilateral and Pearl, for Ukraine. And this is really important because Ukraine, as you know, they are really staunch, they are fighting back, but they are also still hit with missiles, etc., on their civilian infrastructure and innocent civilians. So this is important. But what you see overall is a picture of Canada and Europe stepping up, spending billions more on defense, ramping up the defense industrial base, keeping Ukraine strong. So I think this is very important. We will take stock today and then chart out the course towards our summit in The Hague. So I take a few questions because we will see each other later today at the press conference. Sir.
Secretary General, there's Arctic Sentry, Baltic Sentry, Eastern Sentry, Steadfast Dart. Norway is doing a cold response. Has there ever been so many NATO exercises planned in such a precise period of time as we're seeing right now?
Well, thank you for that question, because I'm not sure it is more than, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago, but it clearly shows you that the threat is there. The long-term Russian threat is there. And we should not be naive, by the way, about China. And when it comes to the Arctic, it is not only Russia. It is also China. We know that sea lanes are opening up, so we have to defend the Arctic and bring together all these various initiatives. And then charting a way ahead, making sure that we identify the gaps which are there, and then making sure that we can fill the gaps, and taking into account all the latest technologies through our Allied Command transformation. There's exactly evidence that NATO as a whole, the US, Canada, the European allies, are working hand in hand together to make sure that we defend every inch of NATO territory. Yes, sir.
You said yesterday that the US administration is fully aware of the situation in Ukraine.
Yes.
So aren't you a bit frustrated by the lack of pressure this administration is putting on Putin?
I think that is not fair. Of course, you can ask me any question, but I think the statement within the question is not fair. The US is putting every pressure on Russia, as the Europeans are doing, through the sanction packages. Look what has been happening with Lukoil and Rosneft and all the other stuff the US is doing. The US is still delivering crucial air defense and other lethal weapons into Ukraine through this Pearl program, so paid for by Canadian, European allies and partners. And the US is leading the peace effort. And there is only one country, the most powerful nation on earth, the US, which can do that under the leadership of President Trump, breaking the deadlock with Putin, getting the peace process going. So I really think the US is doing exactly what we need when it comes to Ukraine.
Greenland question off the table now.
Well, what I discussed in Davos, but also what we discussed within Europe with our partners in Canada, our allies in Canada and the United States, is that we have to defend the Arctic. This is Greenland, but also the whole Arctic. And the good news, I think, yesterday is with the launch of Arctic Sentry that we will now bring together all the assets which we have currently available in the Arctic, getting the whole picture, getting NORAD involved, US NORSCOM involved, EUCOM involved, and all the European allies together to make sure that we defend the Arctic against, as I said, the opening up of sea lanes, Russia increasingly active there, but also China.
Are you not concerned, Secretary General, that this
renewed
focus on the Arctic could pull focus somewhat from NATO's eastern flank?
No, NATO is so strong that we can do both, and we have to basically have a 360-degree approach to any threat against NATO territory. And Eastern Sentry, making sure that our eastern flank is secure and strong, and we have seen the drone incursions in Poland early September. We have seen what happened in Estonia a couple of weeks later in September with the MiG from Russia into Estonian airspace. So we have to make sure that we defend every inch of Allied territory. So Eastern Sentry is important, Baltic Sentry, making sure that we protect the undersea sea cables and critical infrastructure, but of course also the Arctic. And this is with Greenland, but also the rest of the Arctic, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark through Greenland, Iceland, Canada and the US, focusing, of course, primarily on the area where our Supreme Allied Commander is working with.
Sure. European allies are buckling up now for a while for the US posture review. Do you think Bridge Colby today will have a reassuring message that it won't be as bad, as big, as fast as expected?
Well, what I see happening over the last year is the US, and Bridge Colby has been important here because he has always been an advocate of Europe stepping up. The US leadership team under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Hagsett, Secretary Rubio, indeed also Under Secretary Colby, they have always consistently pleaded for Europe doing more, Canada doing more, taking more care of the defense of NATO territory, of course in conjunction with the United States. And I predict that longer term you will see, of course, the nuclear umbrella as the ultimate guarantor of our security here in Europe and Canada, but also a strong conventional presence of the US here in Europe, which is crucial. We all know this. And NATO is not only there to protect Europe and Canada, it's also there to protect the United States. And for the United States to be secure, you need a strong and secure Arctic, a secure Europe, but also a secure Atlantic. So we are in this together. This is how this alliance was founded 77 years ago in 1949. Final question, and then we'll see each other at the...
Are you expecting tension in the room today between Denmark and the US over Greenland, or have you managed to sort of ease the alliance through that crisis? And are you disappointed that Pete Hegseth isn't coming? Is that a signal that the US actually isn't that interested in its transatlantic bond?
Well, on the first question, what I'm seeing is that as an alliance, we came together to discuss this threat assessment when it comes to the Arctic, which is, yes, Greenland, but also the whole of the Arctic area. So including our new members, our new allies from Sweden and Finland, who bring a lot of experience when it comes to this. Take Norway, which has been in the alliance for so long, I think from the start, if I'm right. But Norway bringing this incredible experience and knowledge when it comes to the protection of the high north. I know this because Dutch Marines have always been training there. So not personally having that knowledge, but my brother and knowing my friends who were training there in cold weather conditions. So we have that collective experience in NATO that we have to defend the Arctic. This is what the Greenland discussion was about, but also the wider Arctic discussion is about. And I think with Arctic Sentry and the trilateral talks ongoing between Greenland, Denmark and the United States, this is all important to make sure that we prevent Russia and China from getting access, but also to protect the whole region. And when it comes to Secretary Hagsett, I mean, I'm in regular contact with him and all the senior officials in the United States. Of course, the American president, #1, the overall leader of the US, but also his whole foreign leadership and defense Secretary of War leadership team. But hey, they have to take care of the whole world. This is the United States. NATO is very important, but there is also the Western Hemisphere. There is also the Indo-Pacific. I totally accept it, agree with it. And I had dinner last night with Bridge Colby. I think he has been a consistent voice of, hey, Europe, do more. Because as a United States, we also have to pivot more towards the Indo-Pacific. Let's make sure that collectively we keep Europe strong and Canada and the United States, so NATO territory. But also make sure that we keep our eyes on the Indo-Pacific and not be naive about China. So having him today in the room, I think is really having added value. So I'm happy he is here. I totally accept Pete Hegseth also having to take care of all these other responsibilities. Thank you so much, and we will see each other later today at the presser around 3 o'clock. Yes. Thanks. Bye.